Hello and welcome to Nintendo Agenda. This episode is going to be dealing with the Joy-Cons for Nintendo Switch. In future videos, I want to talk more about Nintendo's future and all that kind of stuff. But I think that I have to get some of this. There's misconceptions out there. There's people out there who just and I'm not being a Nintendo apologist here or whatever, but some people think that this is an exclusive to Nintendo problem, the Joy-Con drift, and then there's also other issues where people are presenting patents that Nintendo has for a new Switch Pro Joy-Con and all this other stuff, and I wish people would do more research. And I wish people were more informed. It's not too hard to learn instead of just listening to what the popular YouTubers say and just regurgitate the same vomit from websites over and over again. But anyways, I'm not here to knock on them. I mean, they're just doing what they're doing, and they do it to get clicks. But here I am trying to inform you. So first, do a search. IGN has this really good article on unused Joy-Con patents. So just do that search, and it's the first thing that pops up. And there it is. Have to thank them at IGN for making this. Most of these are from Japanese patents, but there's also some American or United States patents in there too. But you see the standalone Joy-Con. Remember when people were saying, "Oh, this is a for the Switch that's going to be a home console, and it's not going to have a screen. It's just going to be an Ultra HD 4K." Let's not talk about that. We're just talking about the Joy-Con right now. But this was rumored to be a Joy-Con, a new one or whatever. Then here's another one, a hinged Joy-Con, more moving parts. So obviously Nintendo didn't go with that. And then here is the wide Joy-Con. This might have been one of their earlier designs. They thought maybe they needed more space for the hands to hold them as individual controllers. Some people have gripes. They think that the Joy-Cons as they are too small for their beefy hands or whatever. But, it's kind of like a stereo remote or whatever. So, it is small, don't get me wrong, but for the form factor it was, and for it being a collapsible controller that separates from the system and yada, 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 I think it's well designed. This right here, though, I think is a little bit too big, especially when you plug it in as a portable. It looks kind of goofy, makes the portable look worse. This more recently came up in a bunch of videos. Oh, this is the new Joy-Con. Oh, they're going to use a circle pad just like they did in the 3DS. That's going to fix a Joy-Con drift. No, dude, this is old. This is from 2016. Now, the pictures that they have in here are from the Japanese patent, but more recently it got approved in the U.S. Patent Office. Nintendo and all these companies, they patent all kinds of stuff. It's just to cover their ass. It's not to because they're actually making stuff. More than half the stuff they patent never comes to fruition, let alone are they actual products that are going into production. This right here looks more like a Wii remote. That may be a button in the center. Maybe it is a circle pad. Maybe it is a new joystick or a different joystick design. They went with a more portable one because they wanted it to be more flat. The Joy-Cons now use sticks that do stick out a little bit more, certainly a lot more than a normal portable, certainly a portable that was, had a clamshell design like the DS or the 3DS. That's just, they felt that they needed a more prominent stick. Some people say it's not good enough. It doesn't stick out enough. And then others might say this, that, or the other. A lot of people say a lot of things, but let's just say this. This is not a new thing. This is not for the Switch Pro or whatever. This is, it kind of blows my mind when people instantly jump to that. Here's the next one, where D-pad only. Now, I have a lot of ideas. I personally think that an analog D-pad is a possible thing in the future. I love D-pads. They're for classic gaming. It's more precise, and for arcade gaming too. They have 4-way and 8-way gauge controls on those, and for games that need precision, like fighting games, 2D fighting games, or even 3D fighting games. It's a perfect set of controls. So having a D-pad in there, it really does simplify it, makes it look like more old school, and you're thinking to yourself, no, we need sticks. We have to have sticks. That's what we just need that. That's the new standard. Yes and no. I'm not saying that it's not a new standard. It is, but I think that it was kind of a mistake to not have D-pads as a part of the control scheme, and obviously Nintendo thought probably went back and forth in their designs, and that's why there's this patent here too for D-pad only. Then there was plug-in controller pieces, which this was probably started even before the. You got to look at the 3DS. It had the Circle Pad Pro, which was like a second stick, and it communicated with the system with infrared, so that it didn't have to use a battery or whatever. Or it did use a battery, but like it was not that much. It was just like simple data was sent to the infrared on the system for the second stick, basically. Really only one game used it. It was Kid Icarus Uprising, and I think maybe Monster Hunter did as well. But regardless, that was a thing, and Nintendo was probably fooling more with doing more of that kind of stuff. And this eventually would lead into what would become the Switch and the Joy-Cons and everything. And then there's also the modular concept. This is obviously looks more like a Wii U gamepad, and they probably debated. They had the asymmetrical design. That's always been a thing since the GameCube. But here you are, with the Wii U, and it was the home positions on both sides were the sticks. And then on the left side, there was a D-pad in the secondary position and the buttons in the secondary position on the right side. Blah, blah, blah. They probably had these ideas for modular controller elements so that you can customize your controller more and stuff. We'll get into each of the pictures as I see the gallery inside of these. And then this is a more recent patent, but that doesn't mean that it's gonna happen. But this is a touch pen, and with the what do you call it? It's not in the Switch Lite, just like I don't think that the Switch Lite has the camera on the right side. Or the right Joy-Con if you're using Joy-Cons, and it doesn't have HD rumble is what they called it. But if you bought a separate joypad to use on a Switch Lite or a regular Switch, and have HD rumble, and then on top of that, with this touch pen, it could give like pressure sensitive stuff, and it's an interesting concept, and it's really cool that those sliders that is the Joy-Con strap, much better designed than what they did with the Wii U, or not the Wii U, sorry, the Wii, when they had those straps. Not only is it a better design, but it opens up things for more potential for add-ons for the controller. You could snap something else in place of that. I think an infrared pointer, like the Wii remote had, because I think that that's a greatly missed, and I know people like gyro controls for things like Splatoon and stuff, and for other third party games and first person shooters and stuff like that. But I kind of miss the IR pointer controls. You'd have to have another sensor bar or a camera system or something like that. But it's a possibility they could do that. I don't know if the power goes both ways in the Joy-Con. I know that the power, because it has its own battery, I know that the power goes to charging the battery, but can it pull from the battery for an outside thing that's plugged in? And that could kill my idea completely for an IR, Joy-Con strap, that slides on there. This touch pen might not even have any kind of electronics in it. It may just be a pen. That's it. It's like a stylus. So, and that's that. But let's go through the pictures individually so that you can see that these are not new patents, like as if Nintendo is making something new. All right, it's just not. So here's the one. I remember months ago, people were like, "Oh, and I kind of looked into it and I was like, well, maybe they're trying to do away with the rails because if you follow the Switch and the hacking community with the Switch, that's how they basically ended up hacking the Wii, or hacking the Switch. Gee whiz, was by making like basically a paperclip or a safety pin that bridged 2 points in on the right Joy-Con rail of the Switch to trick the system into thinking that, so that it could run unsigned code, and you could hack it and blah blah blah. There's a lot more to it than that, but that was the beginning phases of that. And then people made a more sophisticated jig that slid in place that acted as something to bridge. Just look into just do a search on that. I'm not going to get into it here, but this controller would have eliminated that because it doesn't have rails. It doesn't. Maybe they were planning on doing something like this for alleviating that problem, so that the Switch itself would not have. They would have to have some other way of it combining, maybe a shell or something. I don't know how they would have done it. Or if this was just some kind of standalone thing that was never meant to be attached to anything, and that's why it didn't have rails. Who knows? Maybe it was just a design thing just so that they could go, oh, okay, well, we have one that doesn't have rails, or, for a patent. Here's the hinged one, and I'm super glad they didn't go with this. I know people think about ergonomics, and I know that some people find the Joy-Cons not comfortable, but you can't have an all-in-one solution where it's like, here's the best way, flat, that we would prefer, but then here's also, this hinged thing that you could do with more moving parts and more things that could break, and oh boy, that would have been, it was already hard enough probably for them to sell it to design teams to have detachable controllers, and also to the consumer to have detachable small controllers in a portable. There was probably a lot of hard sells for the Switch in general, but they struck gold, and they had a nice combination, and I'm glad they didn't go with this, because I do think that this would have caused problems. There is other ways to do angled controls if you wanted to, and there's other companies that have released bigger Joy-Cons, and Joy-Cons with different ergonomics for people who have who don't like the Nintendo brand ones, and that's a thing. So then the next design, that's the same thing with this too. There's ones out there with longer handles. I think they made for what's that? There's that mech game. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but it would work with other games too, and it had a D-pad. That is always the first thing that companies do when they redesign the Joy-Con. They add a D-pad, and fans, when they make their own fan creation Joy-Cons, with their different color shells and all that kind of stuff on Etsy, they have button layouts that have a D-pad in it instead of just the 4 buttons, directional buttons, like is on the current Switch left Joy-Con. So this is a bigger design. As you can see, it's kind of whoa with the with the attached to the Switch itself. So I'm glad they didn't go with this. I'm glad they went with something thinner, smaller, more compact. This, again, to me, reminds me of the Wii Remote, the layout. And maybe that's one of the design choices that they had was like, oh, well, let's go with something that's going to remind people of the Wii, but that's smaller, has maybe more features here and there, yada, yada, yada. And some people are saying, well, maybe this on the left side is the plus button, or the minus button, and on the right side there's a plus button, and then the secondary button is the home and the share button that's on there, or the picture button, possibly, or maybe these were just meant to be functional buttons, like with the Wii Remote. But I'm glad they didn't go with this. D-pads in the home position on both sides, and then sticks. But then the buttons, there's only 2 on each side. I mean, that's kind of, unless they planned on making it to where the D-pads replace the buttons, which, they probably went back and forth. What is going to be the best design? How are we going to do this, So, anyways, but that is not a new controller. That is not, as you can see, this is the Japanese one. It was more recently that the American one went through. So people are like, oh, it's going to be for the Switch Pro. Oh, this is going to be the new controller. It's going to fix Joy-Con drift. It's going to have it, I already did that excited speech earlier, so I don't need to do that again. But and then there's also this other design that's D-pad and buttons like classic NES or Super NES, in the asymmetrical position, which ultimately asymmetrical works the best, because when you detach these Joy-Cons and then hold them in your hand with the rails on the top for the L and R buttons, is that what they call them? No, I'm sorry. They're called SL and SR buttons. Then it feels more like an old school controller, and with them having D-pads instead of sticks, that would give it more of that kind of feel. I have like my own personal ideas. I have tons of ideas for controllers. They could have put a jog wheel in the middle of the D-pad for finer controls, and it would be like a stick almost. Not really. It wouldn't. In some ways, it wouldn't feel like a stick, and in other ways, it would control like a stick. So that's a whole other thing. And jog wheels are probably, especially that small, are probably for fine controls. Maybe that might work, but then when you're using the D-pad in general, I'm getting off on a tangent here. But they could, give more pressure sensitivity to the button presses for a D-pad, to where light presses or hard presses could equal more in a direction, that kind of thing. They could make a D-pad more like a stick, in other words, or more like analog control. But it would still feel like a D-pad. It'd still feel very digital, very precise, 4 or 8 directional. So it wouldn't have that, even like it wouldn't feel like a stick. It just wouldn't. But stuck on that tangent. Let's get off of that. But here's the other side, and as you can see, they were going, aha, we have to go with an asymmetrical design, even though it probably doesn't make a lot of sense to have the left and the right be different. But here it is, and now you can control them or use them as separate controllers. So like when you buy a Switch, you could have two players right out of the box, and that was probably one of those things that, oh, that makes sense. I could see the boardroom meetings now about that. So there's that again, still continuing. Now here's the detachable controllers, and as you can see with this, it was obviously going to use probably some kind of infrared to communicate with whatever it's attached to. But then you could have all kinds of different controller designs. Oh man, I think I broke this. I broke it. Oh boy, let's go back to this again. Oh boy, it's still screwed up. Wow, I don't know what's wrong with this. Let's go back to this, and then let's go to this. It is not letting me change the picture for some reason. Wow, this is goofy. Oh boy, so how do I fix this? Oh man, there's that stupid Flipboard again. I don't want to go to Flipboard. I want to go to actually IGN's site for this. There we go. Gee whiz, was that hard? Okay, so this is where we were. I'll know not to zoom in next time because it screws it up. That looks like an Etch-a-Sketch. But obviously this was during the Wii U gamepad days. And they were like, oh, what can we do to, change it up and add controls? Here is another interesting patent, a dial control. Kind of like the old school paddle controls or driving wheel for like the Atari 2600. I personally would love to have scroll wheels like that are on mice for all kinds of different kinds of control as the L and R buttons. I think that those would be great. They're clickable, and then you could slide them, clockwise or counterclockwise as a wheel. They should do it. They should just do it. Just shut up and do it. But then that leads them into this modular design. But, you got the plus of this is customability. The plus of this is also like if one of them goes bad, you could always replace just that part of the controller, But the negatives to this is, losing these parts, especially for kids. With more modular design like this, more moving parts equals more chances for it to break. So, yeah, this is something that, in a perfect world would make a lot of sense, but, the world is filled with goofiness and problems. So, they were also probably thinking about this too, where like one, on the left side there could be player 1, and on the right side there could be player 2, that kind of thing. I don't know what this is supposed to represent, this one down here, this figure 6D, but there it is. And then we're back to the touch pen control, and it says to use button input for that. So I guess the screen wouldn't detect more pressure. It would have to be like a button, so like that would add more pressure. I don't know. And I don't think that the when they show this one picture of the patent, they're showing the light shining through all the way to the other side. It is not electronic here inside of this pen, so there's no like actual like it's just a pen, basically. It's a stylus. It's a fancy stylus that attaches to the Joy-Con. That might make it more awkward to draw or to write with if that was the intent for like a Mario artist or a Mario Party, or not Mario Party, but a Mario artist or like Mario Paint type game. you know, especially if you have to press buttons to add pressure. I don't know. And then if there is no electronics in this, it's just a physical thing, and it can't pull from the battery of the Joy-Con. It would have to be powered separately. Then that kills my idea for adding a IR camera like the Wii remotes have. So, I digress. This is back to the beginning. So let's get out of this. All right. I have a couple other things to talk about. That was the patents portion of this, and I've already probably spent too much time on that. But we need to talk about analog stick drift, because when you bring up Joy-Cons, that's one of the first things the very vocal negative internet brings up. But like, as you can see in the first example, it's PlayStation 4's analog stick drifts, and you get a lot of PlayStation 4 ones. And even now with the DualSense, the PlayStation 5 controller has analog drift. It's not just a Nintendo thing. It's not just a Joy-Con thing. It's not just even a Sony thing. They say analog stick drift on Xbox One. Even the Xbox One Elite expensive controllers have Joy-Con drift. And, people are quick to blame these companies, especially Nintendo, because the Joy-Con, there's more people buying Switches, so it's more of a problem, or the people are being more vocal about it because they're like, oh, wait a minute, I don't remember. Sticks didn't used to do this back in the Dreamcast days, back in the 64 days. 64 sticks got loose over time. And then even in the PlayStation days and original Xbox, and even all the way up to the 360, this drift, quote unquote, was not as much of a thing. But here's what's changed. First of all, it's the same company that provides the same kind of technology for these sticks, and it's kind of archaic when you think about it. They're using metal contacts on these, I don't know the word, actuators to, rub back and forth or in a circle to detect motion of the stick. And first of all, it's physical, so it's going to wear down over time. And second of all, they're parts that, even though they're conductive and stuff, if something gets in there, it's going to cause problems. And this is a problem for all the companies, not just Nintendo. So, you see all this, and Nintendo's coming up just as much as the other companies. So it is, and even a brand new PlayStation 5 controllers are doing this too. Like, how to fix this, And then when you look at the stick drift, Nintendo has probably one of the better solutions. First of all, the sticks are really cheap for a Joy-Con. So if you wanted to replace them, and the Joy-Cons definitely very delicate, and things can go wrong when you take these apart. I work in a game store, and I take things apart all the time, try to repair stuff, try to restore stuff, so that we can have stuff for sale, because, I don't want to see these things in a landfill. I don't want to throw these away. I don't want to give up on them. Sometimes you have to, or we sell stuff for parts. But, there's lots of different fixes here, right? But Nintendo actually has a pretty nice design with this that a lot of people don't know about. And I'm going to show this to you in case you don't know about this. If you don't want to replace the stick, you don't want to open it up, you don't want to get that, like, fine cleaning, which really all of those things, because it's like a car, it's like a tool, it's like, a computer. You're going to have to, if you want it to last long, you're going to have to service it yourself. You're going to have to learn how to fix your stuff. That's with everything. It seems like, oh man, this sucks. Why is it like this? Why, I just bought this and now it's already, got this stick drift, or it's not working, or it's broken already. I'll tell you this. Look up stuff about dead zones and sticks. The dead zones on the older control pads, That's why there's not as much stick drift with those. Even though they're older, even though they've probably had more use, even though, you know, they've been in existence for a longer period of time. So, you know, they've been exposed to dust and wear and tear for a lot longer than these brand new controllers have. And yet they don't have as many problems. Why? They're not as precise. They're not as advanced, for lack of a better term. They're not as you know, they don't have as much technology in them in some cases. And they're also bigger. They're kind of more clunkily built, which is, and sometimes it's better that way because they're they're more durable because they're made to stand more of the test of time than these newer ones are. Newer ones are designed to, like, just like newer computers and newer cars and stuff like that. They're not designed to last as long as the olden ones were, because they don't want you to just buy it and then not buy one again for 10 years. They want you to buy it a new one next year. Just like with phones and everything else, they want you to upgrade every year or so, or every 2 years, or every 3 years. That is just how companies work, and it's unfortunate. And that's why there's class action lawsuits against them and blah, blah, blah. But really, when it comes down to it, it's the companies that make and manufacture these sticks, and they do it in the same old-fashioned, archaic way, yet they're adding more precision, yet they're making them smaller. So there's problems that are going to arise because of that. But here's something that Nintendo has done that a lot of people don't even know about. So when you look at this, here's a good picture. Look at that. Right there, that's rubber. That's a rubber flap. You can open up that flap like this, and you can blow into it with a straw or canned air. You can put in WD-40, which fixes a lot of problems. You can, if there's something stuck in there, you can just blow it out, or clean it that way without having to open it up. Now, is this a permanent solution? No. Even replacing the stick isn't a permanent solution. You know why? Because if you replace the stick, that stick is going to wear down too. And as time goes on, they're more worn down. So, like I was saying before about dead zones, look up the difference in dead zones between older controllers or older sticks and newer sticks. And there's software to calibrate this kind of stuff. So if you are like, man, this, some people are like, oh, you lose precision if you make the dead zone bigger. True, but some people like that. Some people actually want hard, sharp churns when they move their stick. They don't want, they don't want to be at a crawl when they move it lightly. They want to move it hard every time, which is going to put more wear and tear on it. And the bigger the dead zone gets, eventually it's going to be so big that, it's only going to be able to detect left, right, and up and down, just like a D-pad. But, for the time being, it's, these are temporary solutions, and it's sad. So people have come up with other solutions, Hall effect. Look that stuff up. This video right here is really interesting. You go to YouTube. It's this guy. He 3D prints his own flight joystick, and video will play after ads. But look this video up. It's pretty cool. Hall effect is basically magnets that move back and forth. So there's no physical connection between. There's these sensors that he puts in his joystick, or in his flight stick, that go back and forth, just like a physical joystick would, in quote unquote modern controllers. And I'm trying to find the part in here where you can actually see the actuators of the magnets work. But it's not there. But if you watch the whole video, just look that up. It's interesting. And look up more stuff about Hall effect. It's basically a hall of a magnetic field, and you're moving a magnet back and forth, and without it physically touching anything, it's telling the distance or the speed or the direction that the magnet is moving in. And it's, doing it through magnetic waves as opposed to a physical connection, because a lot of these use copper. Copper is a good conductor, but it tarnishes over time, especially if it gets wet or if corrosion gets in there, or especially if, like, you're eating Cheetos while you play your game, and all that stuff gets gummed up in there. I know people who have who are like, my 64 controller still works like brand new, even though I threw up on it. That kind of thing. I'm using anecdotal evidence from actually my own history with Nintendo 64 controllers, but but that's because their dead zones were bigger. The technology is more advanced today, so it has more of a likelihood of breaking down. And I don't really like those copper conductors, but that's the best of what we've got. There's also mechanical gears, but then you got, like the 64 had, which used like these windowed things, kind of like how old track balls used to for Centipede. I mean, the Centipede design is brilliant. They shine a light through these discs, and when the discs go a certain direction at a certain speed, it controls where your ship is flying on the screen, blah, blah, blah. And then they kind of reverse engineered that for the trackball on an actual mouse. And then this comes to my idea. Boy, this is a long video. This comes to my idea, which is, why not just use a camera? No magnets, because magnets lose magnetivity over time. Why not have it to where at the end of the stick, there is a light that shines down like a laser or infrared light, shines to a camera, and then the camera detects where that light is pointing. And there's no physical connection. You'll need physical for the actual stick and for the springiness of getting it back into the neutral central position, of course, and to hinging it up and down, left and right, and all that stuff for the X and Y axis. But overall, I think that would be a much better design. Look at mice. They used to be track balls, physical balls that rolled across the surface. If the surface wasn't good enough, it wouldn't stick, and then you couldn't move. Or if the surface was too sticky and you got stuff gummed up on the rollers that controlled the X and Y axis, and also the ball itself, then you were screwed. But what do they use nowadays? They use infrared lights and camera to sense movement in the mouse. It's smoother. It's less of a physical thing, but do people really miss those old trackballs from a mouse? Rubbing across or rolling across their mouse pad that they had to have. Now you can do it just across any kind of desk or anything. You don't with a the light mice, you don't have to, or a mouse that uses, light control. People have already forgotten how hard, well, not hard, but how more, the problems that arose with the old trackballs, cleaning them and maintaining them and stuff. They were easier to get to than certainly these control sticks are. But, that's my solution. I think that there should be a camera inside of there, and I'll show you a picture later that I drew. It was very crudely. But I also wanted to show you this. Search iFixit joysticks drift. And this first video right here from iFixit, they go through explaining it and everything, but there's actually a YouTube video. And they talk about, the copper connectors, and see the semicircle right here that goes along these contacts, as you can see, when it moves up and down, left and right, and moves these hinges to move this copper ring contact so that it can tell how far left and how fast and, that kind of thing. But that wears down over time. And this video explains that and goes into detail, and that it's a problem for all of the manufacturers, not just Nintendo, you know. So with that, we're done with all of those. Now let's go to my gallery here. So when we talk about new Joy-Cons coming out, that'll fix the drift, yeah, I'm sorry. Until they change their design from either using magnetic actuators or sensors like the Hall effect, or they use cameras like I'm suggesting and laser point, like current camera and infrared lasers do, or infrared lights do on current mice. Until they do that, it's probably not going to change. You're probably going to have to service your stuff more, or you're going to have to go into software and readjust the dead zone, make it bigger. You know, and that's something that's built into the Switch, and also the cleanability of opening up that flap underneath the stick to get in there and clean it out without having to open it up or replace it every time. Because, you know, again, replacing it just only, it gives you, it solves the problem for a moment, but then eventually it's going to wear down again. So these are not real, but you know, there's all of these possibilities. Now these are real. Come back to those. Here's a Fortnite one that's being made. So if they're making new Joy-Cons with a new design, and there's a new Switch coming and blah blah blah, they're still making these old Joy-Cons. Okay. So I don't think, and these are some ones that are on Etsy. People make all kinds of crazy designs with the shells, and they change the button colors. And like I said, they have the ones with the D-pads on them, like this one down here. I mean, that's just how it is. So going back to the issue themselves. So here's what the inside of the these sensors right here. They move back and forth, and then they make contact right here through metal for conductivity. They're connected, they're physically touching there. But eventually over time, it's going to bring wear and tear to that. Here's one that's got a lot of wear and tear. You can see all those scratches. So it doesn't, you know, sometimes it forgets the center point, or it's thinking that there's movement there when there isn't. That's what causes the drift and problems. And here's a newer one. It looks great. You know, and if you replace it, great, but eventually it's going to wear down just like this one is. And there is solutions that you could, like you open it all the way up and get to this part, which is pretty tedious, and I wouldn't suggest it, because, you know, getting it back together is a problem, and blah blah blah. Just might as well just replace it at that point if you're already opening up your Joy-Con to do that, or any other controller. Crazy, you know. So like my solution that I was talking about before, on the PCB, underneath the stick, you have a camera that's pointing up, as you can see here, and it's looking at the end of the stick on the inside, which is emitting a light. And so when you move the stick up like this, then the light moves left, and the camera detects that movement, you know, and then interpolates it on a grid or something, you know, just like a mouse does. It knows when you're moving your pointer up. It knows when you're moving your pointer down, that kind of thing. So that would be my solution. There's no physical, you know, the light, I guess, would wear down over time. The camera, especially if it gets dirty or whatever, would wear down over time. But it'd be a lot easier to fix and clean. You wouldn't have to replace it every time. You know, we clean our lenses on our phone cameras all the time. They're exposed. This would be inside of something that would be, you know, harder to get to, but that's good and bad. It'd be harder for, you know, Cheeto dust to get in there. So, I mean, it still would, but at least it'd be easier to clean when you take it apart. And yeah, I mean, I don't know why they don't do this, but Maybe I should patent it. It's probably already patented, but nobody's doing it yet. I don't know why. And then this is my design for a JoyCon. Let's see here. Let's flip this sideways so that you can see using it as a JoyCon separately. It's got the D-pad and it's got the buttons. The stick is in the middle, but that's basically where it is now with the current JoyCons. They would have to shift things up a little bit to give more space on the bottom of the controller, or the face of the bottom of the controller. You know, there you go. And then I drew this very crudely, the layout of it. And they would probably have to redesign their Nintendo Switch logo, because instead of there being a dot at the top and a dot in the middle on the right side, it would be a D-pad on the top left and a D-pad on the top right, or a plus symbol, or a cross key, or whatever they want to call it. So I've already talked way too much, but I do think that I've killed a lot of misconceptions about Joy-Con drift. You should watch those videos that I suggested. You should do those searches that I talked about. You should look up stuff about the drift, stuff about fixing it, stuff about wear and tear. Just like any other device that you own, or tool, or product, it's going to have wear and tear, and you either just buy a new one or you learn how to fix it. And you really have to, it's unfortunate. Things don't last forever. They wax old as doth a garment, as the Bible says. But, you know, things tend towards disorder. That's just the way it is. You know, and I am not being apologetic, and I'm not saying that it's not Nintendo's fault. I mean, there's fault in all kinds of stuff. Did you treat your controller very badly? Did you take it for granted that it was working one day, and then the next day when you know, find it under the dog dish, you know, chewed on by your puppy? Oh, it doesn't work anymore. You know, that kind of thing. Nothing lasts forever, and it sucks. But, you know, learn how to fix stuff. Or take it to somebody who does know how to fix stuff. Sometimes you do have to have pretty good hands to open this stuff up, or to, you know, or just knowledge in general. And YouTube is a great tool for looking stuff up on how to fix stuff and why stuff isn't working. Look up those videos that I told you about, and you'll learn that it's you know, yeah, there's things at fault, but, you know, nothing lasts forever. And then also with these patents too, I hope I killed some people thinking that every time they find a new patent, it means something is going to happen, or it means it pertains to whatever they think it means to pertain to, like a Switch Pro. Like I said, they're bringing out a new Zelda controller, a new Fortnite controller, Joy-Cons. I seriously doubt, well, I shouldn't say I seriously doubt. I do believe that Nintendo is working on something, a future release, but I don't think any of those designs and the patents that we've seen suggest that's what they're going to go with. So those are just ideas, and half those ideas never come to fruition, or never get mass produced, or, you know, anything. They're just there to cover their ass, because that's what patents are for. So that if somebody else makes it, then they can go, well, no, we had this patent years ago, we just never made it, you know, so that way the company can't be like, an outside company can't just like take the credit for somebody else's work. You know, that's just how patents work. So thanks for watching. I'm sorry this was so long. I never intended this to be that long, but like I said, I think I killed a lot of misconceptions. If you sat and listened and watched this, thank you. And yeah, so I probably could have gotten to these points a lot quicker, but I'm not about, this is more like a vlog. Most of my videos they're always longer than I intended them to be, and I'm sorry about that, but I'll tell you, I got a lot of ideas, and I want people to know them, and I really do think these things that I talked about, my ideas about patents, about controller drift, I think I educated some people if people were willing to listen. So thanks for watching, and next time we'll be talking more about Nintendo's future and what I think that they'll be doing.